Hey everybody, real quick, if you need a recap of Cobra Kai Season 6, Part 1, I've got you covered. Just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner, and it'll take you right to it. Now, Episode 6 starts off right where Episode 5 left off, with the introductions of the Sekai Taikai, but mainly the shock for Miyagi-Do of finding out that Tori has joined Cobra Kai. After the initial introductions, all the teams head to the hotels, and there's a little bit of infighting going on with Miyagi-Do. You've still got some tension going on between Dimitri and Hawk, Dimitri not shutting up about getting into MIT, and this plays out when they have to pick rooms. But they put that tension aside, though, when Cobra Kai shows up, and Quan starts to talk a bit of smack, but while it's annoying, they brush it to the side. Maybe that's because they get distracted when Tori finally walks in, but she doesn't say anything to him. She walks right by them. She doesn't want to talk to him. And that might be because Tori is only there with Cobra Kai out of necessity. She never felt like she was going to get a fair shot with Miyagi-Do, especially with Sam. She didn't think she would be captain. It's not like she wanted to team up with Kreese. She's not a huge fan of Kim, and Kim lets her know as soon as she arrives at the hotel that she didn't even want her on the team. So it looks like there's not only infighting going on with Miyagi-Do, there's a little bit of infighting going on with Cobra Kai because of Tori. The infighting, though, with Miyagi-Do continues a little bit with the senseis. There's still a little bit of bad blood between Johnny and Daniel. I mean, Johnny flat out lets Daniel know, we're here next to each other, we're not here together. Johnny wanting to take Kreese out at the knees, and Daniel saying, no, you represent Miyagi-Do. But even with a little bit of tension, they end up rooming together, and they end up going to the cocktail party that night, where Daniel's main objective is securing sponsorships for Miyagi-Do, which means he needs Johnny to be on his best behavior. But one of the issues he has is he doesn't know where Chosen is. He hasn't been able to get in touch with him, and he's really hoping that he shows up at this cocktail hour. It isn't like Johnny's looking for a fight when it actually comes time to go to the cocktail hour, but he seems to find one in the buffet line. There's a guy in front of him who steals both steaks, including the last one on the plate, and Johnny takes offense to it because he wanted a steak. Daniel, who's in the midst of talking to some sponsors, sees that there's a commotion going on, so he runs over to interject, and he's able to calm the situation. When he gets Johnny alone, he says, dude, what the hell? I mean, that guy could have been a sponsor. And Johnny says, no, that guy's a steak thief. Both Johnny and Daniel continue to make their way around, trying to secure sponsorships, Daniel being more professional with it, Johnny, however, being more blunt. It's while doing this tactic that John Kreese walks up and interrupts Johnny's, we'll call it a sales pitch. It's during this that John Kreese shows off his newfound dagger, and he starts making subtle threats to Johnny, and Johnny, not backing down from that, starts to go back at Kreese. Daniel, who once again is trying to secure sponsorships, sees this, and he goes to interrupt. That's when the whole room gets distracted by an obnoxious, not American, an obnoxious Japanese man named Chosen. He comes in drunk, yelling the Miyagi-Do name. It's a pretty embarrassing look for Miyagi-Do. They run to see what the hell's going on with Chosen, and he explains that he went to Okinawa to win over Kamiko, but some younger, better-looking guy in a towel answered, and it kind of threw him into a spiral a bit. He's still recovering from that heartache. After getting Chosen under control, Daniel goes back to trying to secure sponsorships. He's talking to one sponsor that is in charge of the equipment for the tournament, and Gunther, the head of the tournament, is also there as well. That's when Daniel decides to take out Mr. Miyagi's headband. He asks if they know anything about it, and they can both tell that it's really old and it's official Sekai Taikai, but yeah, they don't know much. Gunther tells him that there is one man who might know about it. It's someone named Master Serrano. Luckily for Daniel, he used to live in Barcelona, so Gunther's going to look in to see if he can get in touch with him and give Daniel any answers. While they don't secure any sponsorships at the cocktail hour, because of that, I guess it wasn't a total bust. Now, while the senseis were at the cocktail hour, the kids were doing a photo shoot, but after the photo shoot, things got interesting. Robbie finally got a chance to talk to Tori, and he just wants to understand her decision. He apologizes for everything that happened with her mom, but when he broaches the topic about why she joined Cobra Kai, she just doesn't want to talk about it and brushes him to the side. A little while later, Devin goes to talk to her, and she says, I understand why you did what you did. And Tori chuckles and says, well, that makes one of us. Tori asks Devin if everybody hates her, and she says, no, they're just worried about you. They're worried about you and also Robbie, which is confusing to Tori, and Devin explains that they need Robbie on his game, and now with Tori here, it's pretty clear that he's not on his game. That's troubling. Sam then walks in, interrupts the conversation, and tells Devin that they gotta go. But before they do that, Tori actually asks Sam to wait back so that she can talk to her. She kind of wants to clear the air, and Sam says, look, I'm so sorry about your mom. I've never lost a parent, but what upsets me is I thought we were friends, and I would have helped you through this. I mean, you didn't come talk to me. Hell, you didn't even come talk to Robbie. And Tori says, no, I did. I talked to Robbie when Kreese first showed up. That is big news to Sam. She had no idea. Before she leaves, though, she does tell Tori that while they are friends, if it comes down to it on the mat, she's not going to hold back. Most of the boys, though, are doing a really stupid spin kick competition that is kind of being orchestrated by Quan and Cobra Kai. No one can seem to best Quan, and Quan ends up baiting Robbie into the competition. He starts coming at Robbie's ego, and Robbie says, okay, well then let's make a bet. Our room keys for yours. Robbie feels like this is a guarantee. He's getting them an extra room. But Dimitri does not like that. He feels like Robbie's gambling. This isn't a sure thing. And at first, it looks like that Robbie was right. His first kick is the highest one. But then Quan goes. And he bests Robbie by a lot, snagging their room keys and sending them packing. So now Cobra Kai are all going to have to bunk up in, I think, 1, maybe 2 rooms. Because of the gamble that didn't pay off, once they do get back to the rooms, there's a lot of finger pointing going on, and most of it has to do with Robbie. And that's when Sam brings up that Robbie didn't tell anybody Tori was approached by Kreese. And he says, yeah, I didn't tell anybody because she told him to get lost. It was before her mom died. I didn't know she was going to do this. And Sam throws her hands up and says, how could you not know? This is what Kreese does. He played you, he played her. And while Robbie doesn't see it like that, the rest of the team sure does. But the fact is, Robbie is distracted by Tori's presence. And that night, while everybody sleeps, he sneaks off to go have a conversation with Tori, feeling like maybe now's a better time. But Tori says no, it's not. She makes it clear that while they're there, they need to focus on karate, not their relationship. Basically putting their relationship on pause, which hurts Robbie even more. Not good timing with the next day being the first competition. The Sekai Taikai is a points-based competition. With the first competition, everybody's broken up into brackets of 4 teams each. Miyagi-Do just happens to run into Cobra Kai. The first competition has to do with the captains. If one of the captains hits the mat, they're done. The team is out. Miyagi-Do's objective, protect the egg. Tori, having been at Miyagi-Do, knows that that's the game plan. So she tells Quan what they should do, but Quan dismisses her, because just like Kim, Quan doesn't want Tori there. Tori, though, goes and complains to Kim about this, and Kim says, what are you telling me for? Give the boys no choice. So that's exactly what Tori does, giving Quan and his team no choice and attacking Miyagi-Do head on. Quan squares off with Robbie, and it looks like Robbie's going to get the best of Quan, but he gets distracted by Tori, he ends up getting defeated, and Miyagi-Do ends up getting eliminated from the challenge. It's something that literally everybody notices. Robbie, who's the captain, his head is not in the game. This means that they're going to have to watch Cobra Kai go against a team called the Iron Dragons, whose coach happens to be the steak thief. His name's Marco. And while Cobra Kai thought they were the top dogs, no, the top dogs are the Iron Dragons. They're led by Axel, who's the male captain, and Zara, who's not only an influencer, but she's the female captain and a badass. And they wipe the floor with Cobra Kai. The Iron Dragons put everybody on notice. In episode 7, after a couple events, Miyagi-Do is getting their ass kicked. It's pretty clear that something needs to change up. There's still time, though. They have 2 events until the elimination rounds start to begin. Tension, though, is brewing between both senseis. Johnny starts telling Daniel, you're telling them to take it easy? This is a competition. They need points. They can't take it easy. But Daniel just doesn't agree with Johnny's approach. The conversation gets more and more contentious until finally Johnny says, you know what's bullshit? You're worried more about honoring some dead guy's legacy than actually winning this competition. You can tell this really upsets Daniel and he wants to say something, but the front desk woman says, excuse me, Daniel LaRusso, I have something for you. And when he goes over and looks at it, it's a note from Master Serrano saying that he's willing to meet with Daniel. He knew Mr. Miyagi, and then he gives him an address. When Daniel gets the news, he basically drops everything and he rushes off to this address. He's got a few hours until the next competition, but Johnny's like, are you kidding me? You're leaving for this? And the answer is yes. Daniel is leaving for this. He thinks he has enough time to go meet with Master Serrano and then come back. The tension, though, between what style to adapt for this tournament isn't just between the coaches, it's also between the competitors. While Sam and Devin are taking the elevator up, Sam makes a comment that Johnny needs to get on the same page with her dad. And Devin, who's a ride or die Johnny Lawrence chick, says, well, maybe your dad needs to open up to Johnny's teachings. The fact is, Miyagi-Do is a splintered mess right now. The biggest issue they might have, though, is Robbie and where his head's at. It's clear that he's just not in it at the moment, and they don't really have time for him to get sad about Tori being on Cobra Kai. They need him to get his head in the game. Miguel, Dimitri, and Hawk sit down and talk about the situation, and Miguel makes a great point. Even if they do get to the finals, it's not going to matter anyway, because Robbie's their male captain, and with where his head's at right now and with the way that he's fighting, he's going to get his ass kicked. Hawk ends up telling Miguel, if it means anything, we all think that you should be the captain. And then it gets awkward because Robbie walks out of the shower. Yeah, no, he was in the hotel room the entire time they were having this talk. Very rude. Wait for the guy to go to the ice machine or something, boys. Anywho, everybody needs to get ready for the next competition. But when it comes time for that competition, Daniel is nowhere to be found, which means that this is Johnny's show to run. But everybody's pretty concerned about where Daniel is because it's not like him to not show. Especially Sam, it's her dad. But they don't really have any more time to go searching for him because the competition is about to start. And this is Johnny's time to show that his form of karate is the better form of karate. His message is clear. Go after them, attack, score some points. Unfortunately, that tactic doesn't really work either. They probably could have used Miyagi-Do. The only person to score points is Miguel, and after 3 competitions, Miyagi-Do finds themselves in 12th place. Everybody that's wearing a Miyagi-Do gi is disgusted in their performance, and Johnny gets everybody in the locker room to have a sit-down talk. He puts most of the blame on the kids, wondering what the hell's wrong with them. Why aren't they standing up for themselves? And finally, Sam says, you're putting all this on us? You need to take some blame and responsibility too. If my dad would have showed up today, we never would have lost. Johnny reminds her that he didn't show up, and Sam snaps back, yeah, probably because of you, because you keep disrespecting him, trying to prove that your form of karate is the best form of karate. Devin tries to come to Johnny's defense, but Sam puts her in her place, saying, your sensei just got you knocked off that board in 10 seconds, so why don't you sit down? I don't even know how you made this team. And that comment cuts to the core. There's a second of awkward silence, and Dimitri decides to break it by bringing up MIT, which Hawk is sick of hearing about, and he tells him as much. Yeah, if anything, the infighting in Miyagi-Do has gotten worse, not better. This little sit-down talk ends with all of them just walking out, disgruntled. After a little bit of time, Devin seeks out Johnny. Johnny's always been a mentor to Devin, and something's been eating at Devin this entire time. And the comment from Sam certainly didn't help. And that something is the fact that she cheated to get there. Now that she's actually made the team and she's getting her ass kicked, she's realizing that cheating wasn't the way to go because she clearly wasn't good enough. She should have accepted that. Johnny sits her down and tells her that if he had $1 for every time he had a regret in life, he'd be a millionaire. She can't focus on regret right now. He takes a lot of the responsibility, saying that he put undue pressure on her. But what she needs to focus on now is just kicking ass on the mat. And this makes Devin feel a lot better about everything. Once Devin leaves, Johnny pulls out his cell phone and he calls Daniel. Now, Daniel doesn't answer, and Johnny has no idea where Daniel is, but he leaves him a voicemail saying that, yeah, they have their differences, but the one thing they do have in common is they're always there for the kids, and the kids need him. And Johnny admits in that moment, Johnny needs Daniel as well. So while he has no idea where he is, he tells Daniel, get your ass back here. Well, that's a nice kumbaya moment between former enemies turned frenemies. Couple floors up, that's not the case when Miguel runs into Robbie. The frustration of Robbie's head not being in this tournament and the fact that Miyagi-Do is floundering has just eaten away at Miguel and he can't take it anymore. He freaks out at Robbie, saying that if he can't get his head in the game, he needs to give up the captaincy. Because the way that he's fighting right now is costing the team. Big time, and they're about to go home. The elimination round is about to begin. While Robbie would love to come back at Miguel with something, he really can't because he knows that Miguel is right. But he also knows he needs to get ready for that elimination. When it comes time for that competition, Daniel is once again missing. And Sam is really, really concerned. Johnny tries to calm her down and tell her that he's sure that her dad is just hung up at the moment with something else and he's fine because he needs her head in this game as well. If they lose this competition, they're going home. They're the 12 seed facing the 5 seed. And it's looking bleak there for a little bit until Johnny listens to what his students said and encourages them to use Miyagi-Do as well as his Eagle Fang karate. This works. Despite, at times, them not being on the same page, like when Dimitri accidentally knocked off his opponent from the platform as well as Hawk, they end up winning. Mainly thanks to Miguel, because Robbie's head once again wasn't in it. He got distracted by Tori and eliminated pretty quickly. It doesn't matter, though. Miyagi-Do is advancing in the tournament. And once it's over, Daniel LaRusso finally shows up in the lobby of the hotel. So where was Daniel this entire time? Well, he went to that address. But it wasn't as it seems. He was quickly attacked and put in a dog cage. He wasn't quite sure why this happened, but he knew he needed to escape. He was able to pick the lock, beat up his captors pretty good. But there was one captor in particular that knew karate well. While Daniel was fighting him off, he somehow ripped off the guy's arm sleeve to reveal a Cobra Kai tattoo. Daniel ends up winning this fight and escaping, getting back to the hotel. And he's certain that it was John Kreese who had him kidnapped. And the first person he runs into in the hotel just so happens to be John Kreese, who's reveling in the fact that Daniel just missed the last 2 events. Daniel ends up jacking up Kreese against a wall, and it looks like he's about to punch his face in when he sees Sam, and his whole mood changes. He gives Sam a giant hug, she fills him in on how they did, and then he goes up to the room to talk to Johnny. He listened to his voicemail, it meant a lot to him. But when he finds Johnny, he's packing his bags. And Johnny tells him that Carmen's rushed to the hospital. He and Miguel are leaving that night, back to Los Angeles. In episode 8, with Johnny leaving for California, Daniel ends up calling up Chosen, who's ready to kind of put the booze down. He fills Chosen in on everything that happened to him. And the way that Daniel figures it, Kreese knew about his search for Miyagi and information thanks to Kim, who was in the vicinity of the conversation with Gunther and the woman who dealt with apparel. Daniel thinks that Kim told Kreese. Kreese sent this long-haired goon after him. And now he doesn't quite know how to handle it. Chosen feels really bad about not being there for Daniel before, but he assures him, I'm focused now, and, you need some rest. Why don't you get some sleep? Daniel thinks that's a great idea. And he also thinks that the team should also stay in for that night. Everybody has off the next day, and a lot of teams are going out, but Daniel doesn't want Miyagi-Do to do so. The issue is, Hawk already went to Chosen and asked if he could go out, and Chosen said, yeah, sure, no problem. But instead of Chosen letting Daniel know this, he just tells Daniel, yeah, it won't be an issue. And then he frantically goes out in the streets of Barcelona to find the team. Now, as I said, Miyagi-Do is one of many teams that went out that night. They all end up at the same bar, it seems like. At first, they're all kind of split up. Sam sits down with Robbie, and they discuss at first Miguel having to fly back home. They're both concerned for Carmen. But Sam's also concerned for Robbie and how he's doing. And Robbie tells her that, honestly, it's been tough. And the toughest part is, it seems like Tori is doing just fine. The fact that she's not broken up about their split hurts him deeply. And he's actually thinking about doing something that he never does, which is drinking that night. Sam understands this, but does let him know that Tori picked her side. They've got to start looking at her as the enemy and not a friend for the competition. And it's at that moment that Tori and the rest of Cobra Kai walk into the bar. And when Sam sees them, she says, I got to go get some air. She ends up walking on the beach by herself when she runs into another competitor, Axel. Axel's doing his kata on the beach. He's not imbibing and the drinking and the having fun. He's just working at getting better at karate. And Sam's presence takes him off guard. That's because he's got a huge thing for Sam. I mean, he is completely tongue-tied and flustered around her. But Sam actually feels bad for Axel. The previous day, as she was walking by one of the rooms, she saw an interaction between Axel and Marco. And Marco was really tough on Axel. Then she flat out sees signs of abuse on his back. And Sam knows that it was from Marco because no one's been able to land a punch on Axel this entire tournament. Although Axel doesn't throw his coach under the bus. So Sam just kind of wants to make sure that he's okay. You get the impression that somebody checking in on Axel isn't something he's really used to, and they decide to walk the beach together. Back at the bar, though, Dimitri and Hawk are actually hanging out, and they're getting along. That's when they're approached, though, by a really, really attractive girl, and they start to remind themselves they have girlfriends. When the girl talks to Hawk, he says, "I'm sorry, I have a girlfriend." And when that girl turns her attention to Dimitri, Dimitri completely forgets about Yaz and says, "Yeah, no, I'll dance with you." And it leaves Hawk just sitting there by himself. So after a little bit, he decides to FaceTime Moon. He doesn't mean to, but when she asks where he's at and what he's doing, he says, "Oh, I'm at this really cool bar, I'll show you." And he flips around the FaceTime, and he accidentally reveals Dimitri dancing with this mystery girl. The issue is, Yaz is in the room, and Yaz sees that Dimitri is dancing with this girl. She gets upset. She ends up calling Dimitri and breaking up with him. It causes a lot of tension between Dimitri and Hawk. Dimitri yelling at Hawk for ruining his relationship, and Hawk throwing it back on Dimitri saying, "You can't blame me, dude. You did something pretty shitty. Maybe take accountability." He complains to Devin, who is standing next to him, about the fact that Dimitri can't take accountability, and the accountability line perks Devin's ears up. Because there's something that she needs to take accountability for, and it's what she did to Kenny. This leaves Robbie back at the bar with Cobra Kai. Robbie decided to start drinking after he looked over and saw Quan with his arm around Tori, and it wasn't what it seemed. Quan was just playing head games with Robbie, and it worked. It causes Robbie to actually start drinking rum and cokes. It's even more awkward because Tori is at the end of the bar, and Tori and Robbie are just kind of staring at each other. Eventually, Tori just says, "I'm getting out of here." And Quan realizes that it has to do with Robbie. So to poke the bear even more, Quan goes over to Robbie and tells him, "Don't worry, I'll keep her warm tonight." And Robbie wants to throw down with Quan right then and there, but he realizes that he can't because he'll get kicked out of the tournament. So even though he's been drinking, and even though this guy is basically telling him, "I'm sleeping with your girlfriend," Robbie just sits back down and lets Quan and the rest of Cobra Kai leave the bar. But that's when Tori's enemy strikes, Zara. Zara's sick of hearing the other guys fawn about how hot Tori is. It didn't help matters when Zara decided to buy Tori a drink, not as a friend. She kind of wanted to humble brag about the fact that her sponsorships were paying for it. And Tori basically told her that she's going to knock her teeth out. So when Zara sees Tori's boyfriend at the bar drinking by himself, all sad, she takes advantage of it. She starts to chat him up, and she brings Robbie back to her room. When Tori gets back to the hotel, the elevator doors open as Robbie is leaving Zara's room, and the two are kissing. And Robbie doesn't see Tori, but Zara does, and she gives Tori a nice little wink. As for the other members of Cobra Kai, the boys, Quan and his team end up running into Sam and Axel, who are just kind of getting to know each other, walking the streets, and they start to make fun of the fact that these two people that are supposed to be enemies have seemingly put it to the side for the night. Now, all Sam and Axel want to do is get back to the hotel, but Quan is going to make that difficult. The more that Quan starts to get in Sam's face, the more that Axel wants to defend himself. And one of Quan's teammates can tell this, so he decides to attack first. But Axel's too much. Sam and Axel kick the crap out of Quan's teammates. Quan never ends up facing any of them before they start to hear police sirens and both groups go their separate ways. Sam and Axel run to the beach just to avoid getting caught. And as Sam is catching her breath, Axel goes to kiss her. But Sam pulls away and says, "I'm sorry if you got the wrong idea, but I have a boyfriend." And this is super embarrassing for Axel, who basically runs back to the hotel. Now, two people that none of the kids ran into that night were Chosen and Kim. Both senseis went out to the streets of Barcelona looking for their teams, knowing that Cobra Kai, Miyagi-Do, and I'll even throw the dragons in there, being in the same bar with alcohol, that could be a recipe for disaster. Because of this, Chosen and Kim end up running into each other at the first bar. They give each other dirty looks, they exchange some unpleasantries, and then they run into each other at the second bar, where Kim is trying to find her students, and two drunk tourists tell her, "Yeah, I saw teenagers," but they start to hit on Kim. Kim, utilizing her skill set, throws one of them down and tries to get the information of where the kids are out of them. And that's when Chosen does the same thing to the other tourist. This does work. They end up getting the location of the bar where the kids were seen. But that's when Chosen decides to get in Kim's face about what happened with Daniel, blaming her, thinking that she had something to do with it. And Kim says, I have no idea what you're talking about. But Chosen doesn't really buy that at all. Both of them then head to the bar, but they find out that the kids aren't there and no fights were reported, which is a big relief. They then start chatting, but it's a little contentious. As the conversation gets more and more heated, more sexual tension is building up. Because this is a karate show, karate gets thrown in there. But after some hot moves, some punches that don't land, the two end up kissing, making out. It's hot, it's steamy. And then they do a mistake that every adult does. They go have sex on the beach. Like, there's sand in places that it's uncomfortable. I don't recommend it for anybody. But they end up spending the night together is the point. You do get the feeling that Kim really, really needed this because she's too wound up. The next morning, the two wake up, they go get coffee, and they both agree that this can't happen again. The relationship has to stay professional. They're in a tournament against each other, even if what they did twice was fun. But as they're talking, a guy walks by who fits the description of the person who attacked Daniel. He's got the Cobra Kai tattoo. He's got long hair. So Chosen and Kim follow this guy back to the hotel. Both of them assume that they're going to catch Kreese in the act of talking to this goon. Chosen ends up calling Daniel down to the lobby. Kim ends up calling Kreese down to the lobby. There's a lot of grandstanding going on, but Kreese denies knowing who this person is. But when everybody walks into the room that Chosen and Kim saw this goon walk into, they're shocked. Because the goon wasn't hired by Kreese. The goon was hired by Marco, the head of the Dragons. When Daniel questions him why, he finds out why. It's because all of this has been orchestrated by Terry Silver, who's back. Now, over with Johnny, before his flight takes off, he calls up Amanda and says, I need you to find Kenny Payne right away and put him on a flight to Barcelona. Miyagi-Do needs another fighter, and Kenny Payne would be perfect. The issue is when Amanda goes over to Kenny's house, he tells her, I'm not going. And the main reason why is what Anthony did, or what Kenny thinks Anthony did. Amanda had no idea about any of this. And when she goes home, she looks up the video that Kenny told her was out there, and it is a really embarrassing video. Anthony's cracking up about it, but Amanda doesn't find it funny. And Anthony tells her I had nothing to do with it, but Amanda doesn't care. She demands that Anthony go over to Kenny's house and apologize, because whether he did this or not, the fact is, Anthony has been torturing Kenny since he arrived in town. So Amanda drives Anthony over and waits in the car. But Anthony doesn't apologize. In fact, he ends up chastising Kenny for ratting him out to his mom. And the two end up getting into a tussle on the porch. And that's when Amanda has to get out of the car and she yells at both of them. She explains that this stupid little war that they have is not going to end until someone decides to end it and just be the bigger person. And it doesn't seem like that's going to be Anthony because he just walks off. Amanda, however, doesn't leave Kenny. She sits down on the porch. She talks to him about difficulties in life. And after a little bit, Anthony returns with a bag. He asks to speak to Kenny alone, and he ends up apologizing, realizing that what his mother said is true. He needs to be the bigger person. He has been a dick to Kenny, and he's decided to make amends by drinking a bunch of laxative. As Anthony starts to drink it, Kenny gets a phone call from Devin. Hawk, talking about accountability, just aided her, so she decided to call Kenny, tell him what she did, and apologize for everything. And while she feels really good about it, and Kenny's not mad about it, the damage to Anthony is done. He's drank the laxative, and it's only a matter of time before he blows up a bathroom. But this gesture ends up squashing the beef between Kenny and Kenny will be heading to Barcelona. As for Miguel and Johnny, their flight from Barcelona to California was rough. The stress of what was going on with Carmen aided both of them. They got into it at times, then they got into it with a couple passengers at times. But when they arrive in California, they're both good. They head to the hospital and they find out that Carmen is fine. She just needs bed rest. And while they're planning on staying there in California with Carmen, she says, no, you guys have to go back to Barcelona and win the Sekai Taikai. So Kenny won't be the only one headed to Barcelona. Johnny and Miguel will be heading back as well. In episode 9, you learn all about how Silver found Marco. He got out of prison and his lawyer got the judge to drop all the charges. He started looking for other dojos that were in danger but were also available to go to the Sekai Taikai, and he found Marco's. Marco is horrible with business. He was in debt. He had lost his dojo. So going to Marco with an offer made perfect sense. And the offer was simple. He was going to front the money for Marco and the Dragons to go to the Sekai Taikai. All he wanted in return was for them to embarrass Cobra Kai and Miyagi-Do. Once the Dragons did that, he would essentially give Marco his dojo back. And that's an offer that was too good for Marco to pass up. While just about everybody in the room wants a piece of Terry Silver, he gets up and goes to a massage. And Kreese is about to stab him with that dagger, but it's Kim who gets in the way and says, "Not yet. After the tournament." She's condoning murder. It just has to wait. When Johnny arrives back in Barcelona with Miguel and Kenny, he's pumped up. And then Daniel and Chosen have to take him to the side and let him know what they've already told the kids, that Terry Silver's back. And not only do they have to deal with John Kreese, they've got to deal with Ponytail Guy. And like the rest of them, Johnny's pissed off. He can't believe that he weaseled his way out of prison. But unfortunately, there's nothing they can do about it. So they have to go ahead with the tournament and hope that they win. After this little talk, Daniel does pull Johnny aside. He thanks him for the voicemail, but he also lets him know that he's thrilled that Carmen is okay. And it seems like both senseis are on good terms. While that was going on, Devin was giving a face-to-face apology to Kenny for what she did. And Kenny had a lot of time on the plane to think about it, and he forgives Devin because she's always been really nice to him. But the fact that he just willingly forgave Devin, puts up a red flag to Dimitri. He doesn't trust Kenny. He thinks that Terry Silver coming back and Kenny coming back at the same time, it's fishy. He knows that Terry Silver would be up to something, and the way to take down a dojo would be to put a mole in there. And he thinks that Kenny is a mole. He tells Sam, he tells Hawk, and he's making a really compelling case. So when it comes time for the next event, that is in the back of their heads, that Kenny might be working for the opposition. And this event is team-oriented. It has to do with tagging in your teammates to help out. When it comes time to tag in Kenny, they don't do it. They completely ignore him. And they lose. Now they are one loss away from going home for good. With the loss, there's a lot of finger pointing. Everybody's pissed off. Miguel questions why Hawk didn't tag in Kenny. And Hawk's honest and says, he just got here. You expect us to trust him already? Which Kenny takes offense to. So Dimitri just calls him on it and says that he thinks he's a mole, which Kenny takes even more offense to. He can't believe that he just flew across the world to help them win, and this is the way he's being treated. But the infighting is put to an end when Robbie gets in the way. He takes responsibility for the loss. He tells him that it's not Kenny's fault. And then he storms off because he's pissed. The fact that Miyagi-Do is seemingly falling apart isn't going unnoticed by the coaches. And Daniel makes the point that they haven't even faced Terry Silver's team yet, and they're already falling apart. His head games are clearly working. And Johnny says, well, if he wants to screw with us, let's screw with him right back. But Chosen has a better idea. To have Kreese do the dirty work for him. Kreese has been carrying around that dagger like I carried around my hologram Charizard card back in 1999. It can't get out of his possession. So when he leaves it in his locker, Chosen sneaks in, steals it, and leaves a flyer for a massage. This works because once Kreese goes in and sees that his dagger's missing with the massage coupon, he hunts down Terry Silver and he punches him in the face, demanding to know where it is. And in typical Silver fashion, he laughs it off. He has no idea what he's talking about. But Kreese wants blood. He's only stopped when Gunther gets in the way and warns him that he'll kick him out of the tournament. And Kim has to calm him down. But this little plan to get Kreese and Silver at each other's throats does work. Now all they have to do is fix their own team. And Miguel is well on his way to doing that. He knows that Robbie needs to get on his game, and what they've been doing to Robbie isn't working. Just like Kenny, he had a lot of time on that plane to think, and he realized that he's being an asshole to Robbie. So he apologizes. He gives him a pep talk, and he tells him that when the time is right, he is going to come up big for this team, just like he's always come up big. And that is why he's the captain. On the other side of the floor, Robbie's girlfriend, or maybe ex-girlfriend, Tori, she's just standing there minding her own business when Zara comes up and starts live streaming, saying how she's dominating the competition, and Tori is sick of hearing it. She grabs Zara's phone and tells the entire live stream what Zara did, stealing Tori's boyfriend. It looks like those two might come to blows, until Kim gets in the way, tells Zara to kick rocks, and yells at Tori that all she's been focusing on is everything off the mat. Everybody, in fact, needs to get ready for the next competition. And for a team like Miyagi-Do, it's a big one. As I said, if they lose, they're going home. As Kenny is trying to get warmed up, Terry Silver comes up and has a conversation with him. And he tries to play the same head games that he always plays. He starts telling Kenny that the current team that he's on doesn't care about him. They've never done anything for him. All they've done is hurt him. And what he should do is join a winner, like the Dragons. Silver plants that seed, and then he walks away, leaving Kenny to think about it right before the competition's about to begin. But Terry Silver's head games do not work. The competition is the same one as before, so you've got fighters having to choose what teammates to tag in. When Robbie's on the mat, he's getting pressured by Dimitri not to tag in Kenny, but Robbie decides to be a leader, tags in Kenny, and it works. Kenny wipes the floor with his competition, keeping Miyagi-Do alive in the competition, and if they win their next fight, they're on to the finals. Just for good measure, he flips Terry Silver off. And now everybody knows that Kenny is not a mole, he's working for them. After the victory, Kim walks up to Chosen. She's been able to figure out that it was Chosen and not Terry Silver who stole the dagger from Kreese's locker. She thinks he's an idiot for doing this. She explains that Kreese is a powder keg, and that explosion can be easily directed towards Chosen's direction, so what he needs to do is put the dagger back. And Chosen thinks about it, and he does end up putting that dagger back. The rest of Miyagi-Do, though, they're sitting in the locker room waiting for what could be their final competition. And it's all sinking into them that this could be their final competition, that they've come a long way, that they've fought a lot. In fact, they fought a lot with each other. And that's when bridges start being built, fences start being mended, hugs start being given. It's a beautiful moment. And it ends with Robbie leading a Miyagi-Do chant. They're fired up as they go into the final fight. And it's going to be against Cobra Kai. They then head out to the mat, and Kim did a really good job of firing up Tori to go right at Robbie, which he wasn't prepared for. Eventually, though, both of them tag teammates in, and they're standing kind of next to each other. And Robbie can't figure out why Tori is so mad at him. And she yells at him, "I said a break, not hook up with other people." To which he says, "What about you and Quan?" And she can't believe that he bought that. She tells him that that was nothing, that Quan was messing with him, and he got played. And that infuriates Robbie. So when he gets tagged in, he wants Quan, and he destroys him. I mean, he embarrasses the hell out of Quan. Miyagi-Do is advancing, and Cobra Kai is going home. The Dragons also advanced, and Terry Silver walks up and congratulates Daniel, but he's also come bearing gifts. He did a little digging into Mr. Miyagi's past, and he's come up with some information, so he hands the envelope over to Daniel, and then he leaves. According to the records, Mr. Miyagi killed somebody at the Sekai Taikai. In episode 10, Daniel, Johnny, and Chosen go to confirm that Terry Records' papers are legit. And Gunther confirms, yes, they are legit. Back then, the tournament was run a little bit differently. It was more dangerous, and unfortunately, every once in a while, a death would happen. And you can tell this crushes Daniel. While his friends are there for him, they also have a tournament to get ready for. And for some teams, they have a plane to get ready for. That team being Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai, as well as all the teams, are hanging out in the hotel lobby, and Axel is giving death stares to Miguel, which Miguel can't quite figure out why he's doing that. He mentions it to Sam, and that's when Sam lets him know about their little run-in on the beach, and how he got the wrong idea. It's clear that Axel isn't taking it well that Sam had a boyfriend, which is understandable. He spent all of 12 minutes together, and they fell in love. While Axel and Sam's relationship doesn't even get off the ground, Robbie is trying to save his with Tori. He walks up, he apologizes for getting played by Quan for what he did, but Tori shoos him off. She doesn't want to deal with this right now. She's disappointed in herself, she doesn't want to be going home, and she certainly doesn't want to be dealing with this mess. Quan then walks up, and he interrupts their conversation. He starts telling Robbie how lucky he got. He's clearly trying to bait Robbie into a fight. But Robbie, knowing that he got played before, doesn't get played again. He just tells Quan, "Guess I'm lucky, we'll never find out." And then he walks away. Quan wasn't expecting that. He's pissed off. He starts mouthing off to Tori. Tori gives it right back to Quan. It looks like they're about to come to blows when Kim gets in the way of that fight. But while Kim was breaking up Cobra Kai fights, the other sensei, Kreese, was trying to get revenge before his flight took off. With Kreese going home, he's on borrowed time to stab and murder Terry Silver. Yeah, you heard that right. And he takes his little knife and he hunts Silver down. He finds Silver on the phone, making a call to his marketing team to get the word out about this tournament. But right before he's about to attack, there's an announcement made that all the teams, including the eliminated ones, need to meet in the lobby ASAP. When they do, Gunther makes a bombshell announcement that one of the teams that advanced to the finals was popped for steroids. They're kicked out. And let's just say their coach does not take it well. But with an open spot in the finals, that means somebody has to take that spot. And that team is Cobra Kai. They're back. This news rattles Miyagi-Do pretty good. Not just the kids, but the senseis as well. Everybody's just focused on Kreese being back in the competition. Chosen's the voice of reason and reminds them that they have a competition to get ready for themselves. And this isn't a team competition. It's the final round, so it's just captains. It's just Robbie. It's just Sam. But when they ask Daniel what the training regimen is going to be, because they do have a day off, he doesn't have an answer. He's so focused on his Mr. Miyagi news. And Chosen has to tell everybody, senseis need time to think about it. We'll get back to you on it. He pulls both Daniel and Johnny aside and tells them to go walk, have a think, figure out a training regimen, and he'll babysit the kids. Johnny and Daniel then head to the beach. They start walking, talking. Unfortunately, though, neither of them are in a great mood, and it boils up into an argument again. Yeah, they've put water under the bridge, but when both of them are annoyed, the bridge floods. They come pretty close to fighting on the beach when Miguel notices it and puts a stop to it. He sits both of them down and he gives them a pep talk on why they're great senseis, how they've saved a bunch of kids, how they've put them on a better path. He turns both of their moods completely around, 180, and when they leave that beach, they're focused on winning the Sekai Taikai. And that's when you get a nice training montage that lasts about 7 minutes. It's intense. The next day, they all head to the final round. It's 4 teams left: Miyagi-Do, Cobra Kai, the Dragons, and a team that you've barely heard from, which means that they're not going to do much. This is broken down into 3-minute matches, and you can score as many points as possible. While Miyagi-Do appears to be ready for this competition, Tori is not. Her head's not in it, and it's clear to Kim that her head isn't in it. As Tori is watching Zara dominate her competition, Kim walks up and starts to give her a little bit of pep talk, but it doesn't really work. Tori turns it on Kim, asking if all of this was worth it. Being pushed so hard, giving up your personal life, your possible dreams. And Kim instinctively says yeah, but it's obvious that Kim's never really thought about how much she truly has given up to the sport of karate, and how winning this competition means everything, and if she loses it, then what has her life amounted to? Kim just once again doubles down on this, telling her that it was absolutely worth it, and walks off. Zara easily wins her competition and makes it clear that she's looking forward to fighting Tori. But then the next competition rolls around, and it's Robbie versus Axel. And this is Robbie's toughest test yet. Robbie throws everything he's got at Axel, and none of it works. Axel's way too good. At one point, Axel gets so frustrated with the fight that he wraps Robbie up and he pushes him to the side, pushing him right into the Cobra Kai team. This infuriates Miyagi-Do's senseis. They want Axel punished for this. And with the distraction, Quan ends up elbowing Robbie right in the ribs. Robbie gets right into Quan's face. And Miguel, who saw that happen, goes to help Robbie out, but Axel pushes him down. Tensions are running extremely high at this point. Everybody's going at each other. And Gunther hops on the mic and tries to restore order, telling all the teams to get off the mat. That's when he's knocked out by the sensei who was leading the team that got kicked out of the tournament. That roided up meathead then turns to the crowd and yells, "Let's go," and an all-out melee ensues. Everybody's fighting everybody. A couple of the senseis try to restore order, but none of that works. In fact, you've got some senseis fighting each other, like Marco going after Johnny. And that's when Kreese finally thinks that this is his opportunity to go after Terry Silver. He finds Terry Silver in the backstage area, all alone. But when he goes to pull out his dagger, he finds that it fell out. It's on the mat somewhere. So he's going to have to fight Terry Silver just with his bare hands. As they're going at it, Quan wants revenge on Robbie. Robbie was busy saving Tori from Zara, which is a big surprise to Zara. She can't believe that Robbie is choosing Tori over her, but Robbie says it's an easy decision. Quan then attacks Robbie. Sam tries to come to Robbie's defense, but Quan attacks her as well. And when Axel, who was trying to kick the crap out of Miguel, sees that Sam was attacked by Quan, he goes nuts. He starts kicking the crap out of Quan, knocking him into one of the TV cameras. Oh, yeah, did I mention this thing's being broadcast out to the world? In fact, Amanda LaRussa and the rest of Miyagi-Do were having a watch party. They're watching all this go down, and they see Quan knock into the camera, his face all bloodied up, and that's when he notices that Kreese's dagger is not far away. He picks it up, he runs towards Axel, goes for a spinning kick, but instead of landing it, he falls on the dagger, screaming in pain, putting a stop to the fight. This even puts a stop to the fight between Kreese and Silver in the backstage area. Daniel goes to check on Quan, but when he flips over his body, it's clear that Quan is dead. Because Quan has lost a lot of blood, he's not responding, and it looks like the Sekai has their first death in a long, long time. And that is the end of part 2 of Season 6. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. I really appreciate it. Please consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a member. I've got mugs and shirts and hats and stuff. Like, you can go buy something. What you can't do, though, I mean, this is just forbidden. You can't leave nasty comments because those make me feel bad. I'm a mental midget, so just be nice in the comment section. Hopefully, though, you'll come back for part 3 when that drops later this year.